Maverick Physical Therapy, TZ1B, TZ1C of pitching mechanics. We've gone through a lot of strategies in terms of thinking out loud, experimentation, ways to help you find and facilitate your own success. Now we're going to go after kind of our TZ1B and C with a little pressing matrix, and also with a pick and a press matrix. So I'm going to set up in TZ1B. So TZ1B, again, this left lateral rotational lunge right here with the left foot and an eye, so an LXI kind of position with the right foot kind of perpendicular to the left foot. LXI would be, I guess, a little bit more assimilated to what will be in TZ1C. But what we're going to do is we're going to stick in this position for right now, and we're going to go through our common shoulder to overhead press and our uncommon shoulder to overhead press, and then we're actually just going to transition into that left lateral lunge with the left foot in an I position, and wail away with our pressing matrices as a way to feed down, top down, into the T-spine, into the hips, into the feet and the ankles. And so TZ1B, I'll start up in this position in which I'll be able to, as I'm pressing, shift into that lead leg. And so a few things that I will do, so shoulder to overhead, forward and backwards, side to side, side to side. Show you a little rotationally. So now I can rotate left and rotate right. Rotate trunk left, press. Rotate trunk right and press. And now we'll go common. Shoulder to overhead behind me. Shoulder to overhead behind me. Shoulder to overhead to the opposite side. So I've got this teeter-totter now. Shoulder to overhead, rotation and press. Shoulder to overhead, rotation and press. We'll transition into the lunges in a second, but I want to share with you some of my secret sauces. And what I mean by that is this isn't just your standard everyday mustard from the Vons grocery store or the Safeway grocery store shelf. So it one-ups what we just did right there. So a lot of times I'll preset the trunk a little bit more than what I just did a second ago. I'm going to play around with head movement. So I can also fixate, let's say, my head with some right rotation to go after the thoracic spine. Or as I do these, I can fixate my head on a target towards home plate to go after the cervical spine a little bit more as well. So let's go T-spine first, and then we'll go from there. So I'm going to preset with some right rotation with my trunk. So I'm just presetting with a little right rotation, and I'm doing my common shoulder to overhead presses, and then uncommon, so sagittal, and all this with some preset right rotation. What I'll next do is use the head, the nose, and the eyes and fixate it off and beyond kind of second base. So TZ1B, I'm going to preset with this right rotation of the head and a little right rotation of the trunk, kind of already preset. And I can feel that in terms of my hips, just jam and load up my butt and my hips. So head, nose, and eyes don't change positioning even with the transverse plane like work. Another way to go after the C-spine. So we'll go with that preset rotation, shoulder to overhead. So uncommon, sagittal, uncommon, frontal, uncommon transverse, And then if we wanted to, again, emphasize cervical spine, I'm going to preset in TZ1B with my feet, and then I'm going to just take a meander on forward where the glove, where the target is, where home plate is, and I'll jam. You can preset with a little more right rotation. So shoulder to overhead press, sagittal, shoulder to overhead, transverse common, transverse, and then we're going to go uncommon. So fixated at home plate, uncommon, frontal plane, and uncommon, transverse. TZ1C, so preset, we'll transition to the lunges in a second, but if I wanted to preset in a TZ1C with the shoulder to overhead press matrices, again, LXI position, my foot is kind of toed in a little bit, and I'm just shifting my weight forward, shoulder to overhead press, sagittal, frontal, just common, and then sagittal with a transverse plane, common, shoulder to overhead press, and now we're going to go uncommon, the shoulder overhead press, sagittal, and now frontal, so overhead into the opposite shoulder, and then sagittal, transverse plane, upper extremity drivers, uncommon, shoulder to overhead press matrix. And then again with those, we can bias thoracic spine, we can kind of bias the cervical spine if we want to do that, and we can obviously kind of preset with that trunk and the transverse plane a little bit more, which I always will anyways, and maybe be just to overemphasize things a little bit. So I'll set on up. If I want to go after attacking the thoracic spine here a little bit more, so we really have the pelvis kind of passing up thoracic spine here now as well, in terms of really taking a big leap forward. And so important in TZ1C that we can, so in terms of balance as well, it's the vestibular system going a little bit more, shoulder to overhead sagittal, shoulder to overhead frontal, which are all common, and then shoulder to overhead transverse, shoulder to overhead transverse, and then we're going to go uncommon, so still with the head rotated right, sagittal plane, shoulder to overhead, a little more difficult than what it looks, and then frontal plane, shoulder to overhead, and transverse plane, shoulder to overhead. And if we wanted to, again, go after the cervical spine there a little bit more, the right rotation preset of the trunk, head, nose, and eyes will be pointed at the glove. Boom. Common in the sagittal, and now in the frontal. And common in the transverse. And now uncommon in the sagittal, uncommon in the frontal, and then uncommon